Hello and welcome to the Daily Comic and Collectible, episode 296. Well, today, the collectible of the day is the Toybiz Toys Marvel Comics Avengers Series Collector Editions Mighty Thor with Enchanted Hammer. Wielding the mystical hammer Mjolnir, Thor is the Asgardian god of thunder, a mighty hero to behold. Thor possesses the fighting skills of the greatest warriors of all time, as well as the powers to cast thunderbolts at his enemies. Joining the Avengers for the adventure and the chance to vanquish evil, Thor has been a player in the greatest superhero battle of all time. Not content with the accomplishments of his past, Thor fights on, knowing that as long as there is evil, the world will need its Avengers. This Mighty Thor action figure is a true vintage classic. Released in 1997 on a blister card, it comes with a lot of really cool accessories. Thor figure comes with his enchanted hammer and diorama thundercloud base with lightning bolt effects. Easily fastens together by plugging bolts into the thundercloud base. Makes a great hero display piece. Figure stands 6 inches in height. Released by Toybiz Toys. Now, the comic of the day is Mighty Thor, issue number 319, with the cover date of May 1982, with story by Doug Minch, art by Keith Pollard, and cover by Keith Pollard. This issue is titled The Zaniac Craves Blood. The story opens with Thor flying around Chicago, getting a feel for the city, before changing back into Dr. Donald Blake. He addresses the surgical seminar on the fine lines between holding the patient's confidence and admitting to one's mistakes. He goes to dinner with Dr. Shauna Lind, and she takes him around the city. At the University of Chicago, she mentions that it was where the atom bomb experiment took place. They stop to watch a movie being shot in the university stadium. A horror picture called The Zaniac Craves Blood, with star Brad Wolfe as the title monster slasher, hoping this will be a big break in his career. During a scene where the Zaniac chases a victim across the stadium, a carelessly discarded cigar ignites a box of explosives and the bleachers are destroyed, but the blast, combined with traces of uranium and heavier water, convinces Wolfe that he's really Zaniac, a serial killer of women, and he also has the power to make a dagger materialize in his hand. He chases Shauna, fighting off all the men who go to rescue her, and drags her into an alley to kill her. Don becomes Thor and pursues, driving the killer away from his intended victim. But the madman sees Thor's long blonde hair and mistakes him for a younger woman wearing a mask and attacks him. Surprising the hero with his inhuman strength, the monster decks Thor and flees. The Thunder God turns Shauna over to the police and finds the movie's director. Figuring the maniac is following the script, he learns that the next scene has the Zaniac invading a woman's hotel near the Loop. Thor heads there and finds Zaniac has fought off the police and driven all the women to the rooftop to murder one by one. The two grapple and fall from the roof to land on the L tracks. A train approaches, and Thor lifts the tracks so that the train passes over himself and the Zaniac. The villain generates one knife after another to hurl at Thor, who whirls Mjolnir, sending them back at his foe, and knocking Zaniac to the street below. The rescued women cheer. Don attends to Zaniac until the ambulance arrives. Then, he and Shauna are happy to find each other safe and sound. And Don decides that Chicago needs Thor as much as New York City does, and decides to stay. Geek Fact: this is considered a key issue, not only for the first appearance of the Zaniac, but also because Thor decides on a permanent move from New York City to Chicago. Bonus Geek Fact: a special shout out to Three Good Nerds, a great channel and member of the community who sent me the collectible in this episode and many others. Please sub them up in the link below, and remember, we all grow together. Another bonus geek fact. Shauna Lind is a physician and former classmate of Donald Blake. They renewed acquaintances when Blake lost his job and Lind was living in Chicago. This relationship led to Donald Blake and his alter ego Thor moving to Chicago for a time. They became very close friends and may have even developed a measure of affection towards each other. Her first appearance was in Thor, issue number 314, with the cover date of September 1981. And final geek fact. Who is Donald Blake? Dr. Donald Blake was created by Odin to be the host for his son Thor. Odin decided that it was time Thor learned humility. Odin had Thor surrender his hammer to him and then sent him to Earth in the mortal guise of a crippled young Harvard University medical student named Donald Blake, stripped of his memory of his true identity. As Blake, Thor learned the value of humble perseverance in dealing with his injured leg, and he came to care for the sick and dying, first as a medical student and later as a successful physician. After leaving the medical school, Blake opened a private practice in New York and quickly gained renown as a great surgeon. After 10 years in the role of Donald Blake, Odin set into motion the events that would lead Thor back to the cavern of his birth and to his lost hammer Mjolnir. By taking up his hammer, he was transformed back into his true godly form. Thor maintained his Blake identity and his medical practice, and began to divide his time between Earth and Asgard. Donald Blake's first appearance was in Journey into Mystery, issue number 83, from June of 1962. Well, I'd like to thank you for joining me for another Daily Comic and Collectible, and I hope to see you again tomorrow. This is Cat Fan Comics Man, and I'll catch you on the flip. Over and out.